discussing on cerebral palsy terms like global developmental delay and intellectual disability. Now let us start from the term called cerebral palsy. Cerebral palsy is nothing but it is a permanent disorder of movement and posture that appears during the infancy or early childhood, which is resulting ultimately in activity limitation, and it is resulting from a non-progressive damage to the developing brain. The lesion can occur anywhere during the prenatal, perinatal, or the postnatal period. Although it is considered to be a non-progressive kind of a condition, the clinical manifestations tend to change over a period of the time. So many of the time you tend to see in neurology whether the problem is considered as a static encephalopathy or whether it is a progressive encephalopathy. So a simple way to differentiate what is static encephalopathy and what is progressive encephalopathy means that if anything, there is a defect in the brain at one point of the time and gradually the child is improving, then we consider this to be a static encephalopathy. Whereas if it is a progressive encephalopathy, there is an ongoing worsening. So a simple term like if you ask the mother that ki bachcha kaisa hai, kaise time बढ़ता जा रहा है, then they will say that no, the things are worsening. So when things are worsening, you know that it is a progressive neurological condition and it is not a non-progressive neurological or static encephalopathy. So cerebral palsy is very, very important to understand that it is a static kind of an encephalopathy. And the most important point that you need to understand that there has to be a problem in the movement and the posture. If the child does not have any motor disability, it is unwise to call it as a cerebral palsy. So it is very important to understand that it is a permanent disorder of the movement and posture that appears during the infancy or during the early childhood. It basically results in activity limitation and it basically results from the damage to the developing brain. So that means the brain gets damaged either during the prenatal period, during the perinatal period, or during the postnatal period, which is resulting in the disorder of a movement and posture. So to just importantly remember, cerebral palsy is a permanent disorder of movement and posture that appears during the infancy or early childhood, resulting in activity limitation. So the insult can be prenatal, perinatal, or postnatal. So prenatal insult, that means the brain can be injured because of maternal malnutrition, iodine deficiency, maternal torch infections, preeclampsia, drugs, and smoking. Out of these, the most important etiology for cerebral palsy, which is often underestimated in Indian population, is maternal torch group of infection. So please do not forget asking for history of mother's fever and presence of rash in the mother history before you try to conclude. The five important things that are there in the perinatal event is basically birth asphyxia because of prolonged labor, hypoxic ischemic injuries which are there, prematurity, that means that's a very, very important thing. Low birth weight is a very, very important concept in which can result in cerebral palsy. So prematurity, presence of perinatal asphyxias are very important etiology for cerebral palsy. Similarly, after the child has been born, it can result in neonatal meningitis, neonatal seizures, head trauma, and kernicterus. So out of the existing causes, I want all of you to remember at least four causes of cerebral palsy, including maternal torch infection. Number two, hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy. Number three, prematurity. Number four, kernicterus sequelae. So these are important etiologies for cerebral palsy that you need to understand. Now, where in the brain does it get affected? If there is a injury that is involving in the parasagittal injury, it will basically result in upper limb getting involved more as compared to the lower limb. But if there is a periventricular leukomalacia, it will result in lower limb getting involved more as compared to the upper limb, which is called spastic diplegia. So that means a child will have difficulty in walking, although the hand functions will be relatively normal. Periventricular leukomalacia is a basic feature of prematurity which is there. So the important things that you need to remember is that you can also have focal or multifocal ischemic brain injuries which can also result in hemiplegic cerebral palsy. Similarly, kernicterus will result in what is called status murmuratus, which is resulting in choriothetoid cerebral palsy. So depending upon what is the type of the insult, the type of cerebral palsy will be determined. So if there is a prematurity, there is a PVL, it will result in spastic diplegia. If it is a focal ischemic injury because of some venous stroke, it will result in a hemiplegic cerebral palsy. If there is a kernicterus, then it will result in a choriothetoid kind of cerebral palsy. If there is a selective neuronal necrosis in the gray matter, it will result in intellectual disability and presence of seizure. So predominantly trying to speak, there are basically many types of cerebral palsy, out of which two important types of cerebral palsy that everybody should remember is spastic cerebral palsy and dyskinetic cerebral palsy. So spastic cerebral palsy, even in the last lecture, I was trying to emphasize on the difference between spasticity and dystonia. So in a child who is having a spastic cerebral palsy, there is going to be increased tone and presence of contracture. So what will happen to the deep tendon reflexes in children with spastic cerebral palsy? How will be the DTRs elicited? Will it be normal? Will it be hyporeflexive or will it be hyperreflexive? Hello. Can somebody type the answer? I'm not able to see. Hello. Can you see a Q&A in which you can type the answers also? Yes? No? मैं कल को पिछली बार वो जब बच्चे जवाब दे रहे थे कुछ तो सुनाई दे दिखाई तो दे रहा था. ओके, इस पे आ रहा है. ओके, देयर इज माय प्रेजेंटेशन.
प्रेजेंटेशन को छोटे में ही दिखा लीजिए, पूरे में मत कीजिए,
ओके,
ताकि आपको आपको उसमें चेंज करने में आसानी हो.
okay, so you can thank you. I think I can make out that many of you have replied that there has to be a brisk deep TR reflexes have to be brisk in spastic cerebral palsy. So similarly, what happens is that spastic cerebral palsy, if the spasticity is involving all the four limb, then you call it as quadriplegic cerebral palsy. If it is involving only one side of the body, then it is called hemiplegic cerebral palsy. And if it is involving only the lower limb involvement, then it is called diplegic cerebral palsy. So similarly, there is another important variety which is called dyskinetic cerebral palsy, where there is an uncontrolled purposeless movement in which you can have basically two impact type phenomena, that is dystonic cerebral palsy, another choreoid cerebral palsy. Please remember that one of the most important causes of dyskinetic cerebral palsy is kernicterus. The other very rare types of cerebral palsy includes hypotonic cerebral palsy, ataxic cerebral palsy, and mixed types of cerebral palsy also.
इसमें भी दिखा जाएगा, ये जो भी वो करेंगे इसमें दिख
Can I make it full screen?
तो बस इसमें दिख जाएगा. एक ही बार करना, पूरा हैंग हो जाता है. आप इसमें देखो.
Okay, so okay, the another important thing that you can very clearly make out that if all the four limbs are getting involved, then it is a quadriplegic cerebral palsy. If it is involving only the lower limb, it is called diplegia, diplegic type of cerebral palsy. If only one side of the body is getting involved, it is hemiplegic type of cerebral palsy. And if three limbs are getting involved, it is triplegia, and if it is only one limb, then it is monoplegia. But we don't call them as cerebral palsy per se. The types of cerebral palsy per se includes quadriplegic, diplegic, and hemiplegic type of a cerebral palsy. But nowadays we use do not use these terms like spastic and dyskinetic cerebral palsy, whether it is hemiplegic or diplegic type of cerebral palsy. Rather, most of the therapists are interested in knowing whether it is a unilateral cerebral palsy or bilateral cerebral palsy. So, hemiplegic cerebral palsy, monoplegic cerebral palsies are considered as unilateral cerebral palsy. Diplegic cerebral palsy, triplegic cerebral palsies, and quadriplegics are considered as bilateral cerebral palsies, which are there. So the important difference I want all of you to understand between the three types of the cerebral palsy includes that the quadriplegic cerebral palsy, I told you that it is most common cause of spastic quadriplegic cerebral palsy is a brain injury that has primarily occurred. So here both upper limb as well as lower limb are involved, but upper limb is far more involved as compared to lower limb. But in spastic quadriplegic cerebral palsy, you can make out that intellectual disability is very, very severely affected in quadriplegic cerebral palsy. They are children who are very prone to seizures. They have lot of feeding difficulty. So they often result from severe PVL or multicystic leukoencephalomalacia. Whereas hemiplegic cerebral palsy, you can often notice that only one side of the body is getting affected. Most of the time, cognition is not commonly affected. Seizures are not very, very common. Feeding difficulties are not very common. The one of the most common cause of spastic hemiplegic cerebral palsy is a focal cerebral infarction. Please remember one very, very important fact is that in quadriplegic type of a cerebral palsy, you will often tend to get a history that the child was in the ventilator, the child had a delayed cry at birth. Many times in spastic hemiplegic cerebral palsy, you will not get any particular history at all. All that you will get is that the parents started noticing that there is a paucity of movement of one side of the body. So just remember that hemiplegic children do not have usually a stormy kind of a neonatal period. So that is why you often call this as a presumed perinatal strokes, which are there. So the third important type is diplegic cerebral palsy. Here, lower limb is involved as compared to upper limb. So what will happen to the ankle deep tendon reflex in diplegic cerebral palsy? Will it be normal? Will it be brisk? Will it be normal? Will it be brisk? Great. So you can make out that ankle DTR will be definitely on a brisker side. What will happen to the deep tendon reflex of biceps in spastic diplegic? What will happen to the deep tendon reflex of the biceps? Very good. So they are often normal. So please try to understand that the spasticity is predominantly involving only the lower limb and it is not involving the upper limb. So please try to understand that if only lower limb is getting involved, you are thinking in terms of spastic diplegia. Children with spastic diplegia are not intellectually delayed. They are usually cognitively quite okay. There must be some amount of delay, but they do not have very severe delay. Seizures are very, very uncommon in these patients and they often result from periventricular leukomalacia. So what is the most common cause of spastic diplegia? What is the most common cause of spastic diplegic cerebral palsy? What is the most common cause of diplegic cerebral palsy? Diplegia का मतलब है कि सिर्फ lower limb involved है, upper limb relatively spared है. So what is the most common cause of diplegic cerebral palsy? I just told you periventricular leukomalacia किसकी वजह से होता है? Very good, excellent. Prematurity. So very important to understand that prematurity results in PVL, results in spastic diplegia. Some kind of presumed perinatal stroke results in focal cerebral infarction, resulting in spastic hemiplegia. Severe birth asphyxia, kernicterus, most of them result in spastic quadriplegia. Kernicterus results in dyskinetic kind of a cerebral palsy. So please try to understand that there is a difference between the three major types of the cerebral palsies which are there. So a child who has a diplegic kind of a cerebral palsy comes to an attention when the crawling starts. So the child will start crawling in such a manner that the child will keep pulling the entire body towards together. So that's why it's called commando crawl. You would have seen how commandos are trained to, go through that bullets. So they often have a commando crawl because they will have tightness which is primarily there in the lower limb. Similarly, when you ask them to be pulled up, you can see that there is going to be a scissoring. The legs are going to be crossed like a scissor. So this is a very characteristic feature of a spastic diplegic type of a cerebral palsy. Children can also have tiptoe walking, because I told you that they will have typically lower limb involvement more as compared to the upper limb involvement which is there. So now most important thing is that, can you now detect cerebral palsy in an early stage itself, or do you have to wait for all these problems to start happening? Probably you can pick up cerebral palsy in the early stage also, in the form that you might have increased tone. You can have brisk deep tendon reflexes in early infancy itself. You can notice that the right limb is moving, the left limb is not moving, so asymmetrical movement is an important early sign of cerebral palsy. Similarly, a very important concept that you need to understand is that the neonatal reflexes have to disappear, advanced postural reflexes have to appear. If neonatal reflexes do not disappear, or if there is an delay in the emergence of postural reflexes, you know that this will result in cerebral palsy. So please understand that in children with cerebral palsy, there is a persistence of abnormal neonatal reflexes, and there is a delayed emergence of postural reflexes that you need to understand. So early hand preference is a very important finding which is there. Prominent cortical fisting can be very commonly seen. These children can also have a toe walking which is very prominent. So primitive reflexes have to the primitive reflexes means the grasp reflex has to disappear, then only the child will be able to hold the hand. Rooting and sucking will have to disappear, then only the child will be able to swallow. Similarly, this asymmetrical ATNR, that is asymmetrical tonic neck reflex, basically ensures that the child, when he turns from one side, the ipsilateral limb is going to extend and the contralateral limb is going to flex primarily. So you can make out that primarily that if this is persisting, the child will be unable to crawl from one side to another side. So it is important that ATNR has to disappear for the child to learn how to turn from supine position to prone position. Similarly, there are certain advanced postural reactions which appear after some point of the time once the primitive reflexes disappear, like body righting reflex and neck righting reflex. In head righting reflex, if you keep the infant in a right position, the head will get righted and then it will keep the baby erect. Similarly, body righting reflexes also there. Parachute reflex primarily means that if you're trying to push the body down, the child will have a parachute kind of a reflex by which it will protect itself. So you can understand that the primitive reflexes will have to disappear after some point of time, and advanced postural reflexes have to appear after some point of the time. So what happens in cerebral palsy is that the primitive reflexes do not disappear and advanced postural reflexes do not appear. So if ATNR keeps persisting, you know that the child will be unable to turn from one position to another position. So as a result of which, you can make out that the child will be unable to turn from one side to another side. So there is going to be a developmental delay in such children. So primitive reflexes do not disappear and advanced postural reflexes do not appear. So how do children with cerebral palsy manifest? You need to understand that most of these children present to you with predominance of global developmental delay. The three things that I want all of you to understand is that cerebral palsy does not mean that the tone is increased. It is not only an increase in the tone, the muscles are also weak. There is a problem in the balance. There is a loss of a selective control. Loss of selective control means that if an agonist has to contract, the antagonist has to relax. If an agonist has to contract, antagonist has to relax. So similarly, what will happen is that if agonist and antagonist are going to co-contract together, then it will result in what is called as dystonia. So this is what is called loss of selective control, in which one agonist contracts, another antagonist relax. This selective control gets lost. So as a result of which, many of the children will develop dyskinetic kind of a cerebral palsy. Pathological reflexes, I told you that neonatal reflexes might persist beyond some period of the time. Most of the children do not only have the motor problem, they are also intellectually delayed. They are more of epilepsy, they have vision problem and hearing loss, speech problems and swallowing difficulties and feeding difficulties. So all of them are very important associated problems. So I'm asking you a simple question, that if a child presents to me with developmental delay and hearing loss, and the child has loss of selective control, what will be the most common etiology in this child? If the child has loss of selective control, dystonic cerebral palsy, hearing loss which is present, what will be the most common cause of the cerebral palsy in this child? Very good. One is asphyxia. What else? But please understand one, remember one important, very good, kernicterus. I've got good answers also like kernicterus. So please remember one important thing. Hearing loss is not a very common sequelae of perinatal asphyxia. Whenever a child with developmental delay presents to you with hearing loss, two important things that everybody should remember is kernicterus, another is torch sequelae. So टॉर्च के बच्चों में और कर्निक्टरस के बच्चों के अंदर हियरिंग लॉस इज अ वेरी वेरी कॉमन प्रॉब्लम. Children with perinatal asphyxia, prematurity, they will have more of motor problems than hearing loss. तो जहाँ पे भी hearing loss आता है, please remember kernicterus and torch group of infection. These are very very important. So if you ask for what is the definitive treatment of cerebral palsy, there is no definitive treatment, only supportive treatment needs to be given. Visual, tactile, auditory, sensory stimulations needs to be given. Muscles are going to be very weak, so muscle strengthening exercises, including physiotherapy, needs to be done. Occupational therapy is very important in the terms that like feeding, carrying, dressing. Occupational therapy needs to be told so that the child is able to perform day-to-day activity. Adaptive devices like walkers and poles needs to be taken care of. If the child has a spasticity, oral medications like baclofen, diazepam can be given, botulinum toxin can be given, and similarly, if there is a lot of dystonia, triexphenidyle, which comes under very commonly pacitane, is also given. If there is a lot of choreoathetosis, haloperidol can also be given. So treat the seizures with anti-epileptic drugs which are primarily there. Now, if you have understood that there are basically the three important points that I want you to remember in cerebral palsy is that there are two types of cerebral palsy. One is spastic cerebral palsy, another is what is the second type of cerebral palsy? Broadly, very good, dyskinetic cerebral palsy. So out of the spastic cerebral palsy, there are three main types. Which type will have lower limb involvement? Which type will have lower limb involvement? Diplegic, excellent. So you have diplegic cerebral palsy, which will have typically lower limb involvement as compared to the upper limb involvement, which is there. So now let us move to another very important concept, that is developmental delay. You know that whenever we are basically dealing with developmental sphere, there are basically five main domains: gross motor, fine motor, language, cognitive, personal, social development, which is there. So you can have development which can be delayed in all the four spheres, or there can be delay only in one particular sphere, or the child could have attained one milestone and then would have lost those milestones. So if there is a developmental delay in more than two spheres, then I call this as global developmental delay. That means out of motor, language, personal, social, cognitive, and personal, social, out of these five, if more than two development is delayed, then I call it as a developmental delay. If one milestone is getting delayed, that means motor is getting delayed but language, cognition is relatively fine, this is called developmental dissociation. If the child attains one milestone and then he loses that milestone, then this is called developmental regression. So you need to be very very clear whether you're dealing with a child with developmental delay, developmental dissociation, or developmental regression. So another very common term that you often tend to see is intellectual disability, which was formerly called as mental retardation. We don't use the term mental retardation anymore. We use the term called intellectual disability. We usually define this intellectual disability when the IQ score is less than 70 and there is an impairment of adaptive behavior and the problem has started before 18 years of the age. So you will see that developmental delay, you call it as a global developmental delay when there is a significant delay in two or more developmental domains, including fine motor, gross motor, number one, cognition, speech, language, and personal, social. इन चार माइलस्टोन्स में से दो में डिले होगा, दो या दो से ज्यादा में डिले होगा, तो then you call this as a global developmental delay. So please understand that you reserve the term called GDD, that is global developmental delay, to children less than 5 years of age. Children more than 5 years of age, you use the term called as intellectual disability. So don't use the term called intellectual disability before 5 years of age. So GDD is a term that is used before 5 years of age. Beyond 5 years of age, you often use the word called as intellectual disability. So based on the grading of intellectual disability, it is divided into mild ID, moderate ID, severe ID, and profound ID. Profound ID children will have predominantly IQ, which is DQ IQ less than 20, which is there. So the other few important terms before uh, we break, we you need to be very very clear that what is autism, what is developmental language impairment. So please understand that I told you that एक होता है motor milestone, एक होता है language milestone, एक होता है cognitive milestone, और एक होता है personal social milestone. So remember that if a child has only language delay, cognition is okay, motor is okay, personal social is okay. So that means the only thing which the child is having is a delay in the language. The most common cause of delay in the language is, what is the most common cause of delay in the language that the child is unable to speak? What should be the most common cause of language delay? Very good, excellent, very good. So you are very clear that you can make out that hearing deficit is the most common cause of hearing defect. It's the most common cause of language delay. But if the child has language delay, along with that, the mother typically says that the child is also having impairment of social skills, and the child also has restrictive repetitive pattern of the behavior, please consider autism spectrum disorder. So that means whenever a child has an impairment of social interaction, that means एक दूसरे से बात करना, आंखों से आंखें मिलाना, देख के हंसना, कोई अंकल आते हैं तो उसको नमस्ते बोलना. So these are all social skills. So if there is an impairment of the social skill, and in addition the child has a language delay, the child has pretended to be deaf. That means काम से बोलो तो सुनाई देता, काम से ना बोलो तो नहीं सुनाई देगा. So that means the child can have deficits in hearing, but the hearing test is everything is totally normal. Restrictive repetitive behavior, the child is into his own world, he's lost into his own world, he keeps spinning around, he keeps jumping around. So please think of autism spectrum disorder. So autism spectrum disorder has impairment of social skills, impairment of the language, and restrictive repetitive behavior. So whenever there is a combination of these terms, please think of autism spectrum disorder. Similarly, there is another very important thing, that if there is an isolated language impairment but hearing is absolutely okay, cognition is totally fine, autistic features are totally not there, then I call this as a developmental language impairment. So please remember that if there is an isolated language impairment not attributable to hearing loss or to cognitive delay or to autism, think of developmental language impairment. I already told you what is cerebral palsy. Children with cerebral palsy will definitely have motor problem, and children with intellectual disability will definitely have cognitive and adaptive deficits, which are primarily there. So what are the most common causes of intellectual disability? The children can have intellectual disability because of certain chromosomal disorders, genetic syndromes, or there is a problem in the brain, that is developmental brain malformation, or it could be a congenital torch group of infection. The infections that I told you, like perinatal asphyxia, IVH, meningitis, these are all very, very common. Endocrinal causes like hypothyroidism should be kept. Malnutrition is also a very important cause of intellectual disability. तो जहाँ पे भी कोई भी बच्चा इंटेलेक्चुअल डिसेबिलिटी का या मंदबुद्धि खाता है, तो उसमें हमेशा हमें हिस्ट्री, प्रीनेटल, पेरीनेटल, पोस्टनेटल जरूर लेना है. हिस्ट्री ऑफ रिकरेंट प्रेगनेंसी लॉसेस की जरूर हिस्ट्री लेनी है. प्रेजेंस ऑफ अर्ली नियोनेटल डेथ शुड बी ऑलवेज आस्क्ड. You should always ask for history of consanguinity. Can somebody tell me that if there is a consanguinity, recurrent sibling loss, sibling getting affected, what will come to your mind? What is the importance of consanguinity, early neonatal deaths, repeated early neonatal deaths, repeated pregnancy losses, sibling also affected with intellectual disability. Very good, excellent, I'm happy. So that means these are all autosomal recessive disorders. So that means you are thinking in terms of, and one of the most important autosomal recessive group of disorder is inborn error of metabolism. So you will start thinking of inborn errors of metabolism, especially autosomal recessive disorders, that you should think whenever a child presents to you with global developmental delay. So similarly, you can look at the clinical presentation also. That means broadly speaking, you want to know that if the child has intellectual disability, is there a dysmorphism or not? Is the child having predominant language delay? Is there a behavioral problem, poor academic performance, or what is important? Always comment on microcephaly or macrocephaly. Whenever the child presents to you with microcephaly and intellectual disability, you know that the insult happened in the prenatal, perinatal, or postnatal period. If the child has normal head circumference, then you know that the insult could not have happened in the prenatal, perinatal. Most likely, you are having a genetic problem. Similarly, if a child with intellectual disability has a syndromic features, you know that it is a genetic syndromic cause of intellectual disability. Similarly, if the child has neurocutaneous markers like caffeolyte macules, you think of neurocutaneous manifestations also. Similarly, if you get hepatosplenomegaly, you start thinking of storage disorder. So always ensure that from the examination you get a clue. Two important points that you should never forget is the head circumference, presence of dysmorphism, presence of neurocutaneous marker. कम से कम ये तीन चीज हर एक इंटेलेक्चुअल डिसेबिलिटी के बच्चे के अंदर देखना हमेशा जरूरी होता है. So, if the child does not have dysmorphism, does not have any neurocutaneous marker, but has microcephaly, okay, so the first line investigation becomes neuroimaging. If you want, you can get a CT scan done or you can get an MRI done. But given an option, I would always prefer MRI over CT scan. Why? Why is CT scan not the preferred investigation, except for what I've written, periventricular calcification? What is the biggest fear with CT scan? Excellent. Exposure. So radiation exposure is a very big problem. So do not get a CT scan done. CT scan in pediatrics should be, CT head in pediatrics should be always restricted only to head trauma patients. Please do not use it for children with developmental delay. And इंपॉर्टेंट थिंग इज दैट कि ब्रॉडली मोटा मोटा डिवाइड कर लो कि अगर बच्चा इंटेलेक्चुअल डिसेबिलिटी है, माइक्रोकेफेली है, तब तो तुम्हें पता है कि इंसल्ट प्रीनेटल पेरीनेटल था. पर अगर बच्चे के अंदर इंटेलेक्चुअल डिसेबिलिटी है, डिस्मॉर्फिज्म है या न्यूरोक्यूटेनियस मार्कर है, तुम्हें पता है जेनेटिक सिंड्रोम है. तो जहाँ जेनेटिक सिंड्रोम्स की बात आती है वहाँ साइटोजेनेटिक टेस्टिंग हमें करना पड़ेगा. सो साइटोजेनेटिक टेस्टिंग विल बी प्रेफर्ड इन प्रेजेंस ऑफ dysmorphic features or unexplained GDD. Especially, you should always screen for Rett syndrome among female, Fragile X among males, Prader-Willi and Angelman should be screened for. Whenever you have history of consanguinity, neonatal death, unusual metabolic order, unusual order of the urine and unexplained acidosis, think of metabolic screening. And one of the important metabolic screening that we order is tandem mass spectrometry, and EEG should be always preferred in all children with seizures which are there. Vision and hearing assessment should always be done in any child. If you are able to very clearly make out from this thing, the only message that I want to very clearly make out is that if you have a specific evaluation, so just to remember that if there is a GDD with microcephaly, you are always thinking that the problem is prenatal, perinatal. So MRI becomes the investigation of choice. If the child has GDD with presence of dysmorphism, you know you are dealing primarily with some kind of genetic problem. So you order for genetic investigation. So the terms that should be very clear is GDD, what is global developmental delay, what is developmental regression, what is autism spectrum disorder, that means when there is social impairment. What is cerebral palsy? That means motor problem. Intellectual disability is cognitive problem which is there. And neurodegenerative disease are also important, and you should be able to understand what is static encephalopathy. So let us run through few cases. This is a 1-year-old child presented with inability to sit. Social smile, social milestones are totally normal. Prenatal, perinatal is totally normal. Examination shows normal neurological investigation. So what is the investigation of the choice in this child? In this child with global developmental delay with presence of dysmorphism, what will you think of? Out of MRI karyotype, which will you do, what will you do? To confirm the diagnosis, diagnosis, it is karyotype. So this is very, very clearly a phasis of Down syndrome. So you need to think of Down syndrome, so think in lines of those lines. Now this is the second case, excellent. So second case, 6-month-old baby comes to you with a history of multiple episodes of seizure. The child has not gained any motor or social milestone, uneventful neonatal postnatal period, no facial dysmorphism. There is a marked hypotonia, DTRs are brisk. MRI reveals this picture. What is your diagnosis? So there is a seizure. There is a seizure. Child has not attained any milestone. So that means you know it is global developmental delay. In a child with global developmental delay, insult कुछ हुआ नहीं, डिस्मॉर्फिज्म कुछ है नहीं, तो इसका मतलब है कि प्रॉब्लम प्रीनेटल पेरीनेटल नहीं है, डिस्मॉर्फिज्म नहीं है, तो प्रॉबेबली बच्चे के अंदर जेनेटिक सिंड्रोम्स नहीं है. बट यू कैन मेक आउट दैट देयर इज एन हाइपोटोनिया विच इज वेरी वेरी मार्क्ड with brisk DTR. So this is actually a, I will tell you that MRI is basically abnormal in the terms of it is almost, मतलब तुमने देखी होंगे कितने सारे गायरस हल्के होते हैं, यहाँ तो इतना स्मूथ सा गायरा हो रहा है, तो एक गायरस एक सल्कर. So this is a figure of 8 appearance of lysencephaly. So this is a cortical malformation that you are trying to see. So that means please understand that children with GDD does not always have to be cerebral palsy. Do not give a label of cerebral palsy unless and until there is a tone abnormality, unless and until there is a disorder of movement and the posture. Okay, this is the third case, 28-week preterm baby, 1.1 kg, admitted in NICU for 20 days, came back at 6 months of age, that the child is unable to sit till now. Uneventful family history, examination reveals no facial dysmorphism, no focal neurological deficit. What investigation will you perform in this child? Preterm, 1.1, stormy neonatal period, now comes to you with GDD. What will be the first investigation that you would prefer in such a child? Very good, excellent. So जहाँ पे तुम्हारा perinatal insult है, वहाँ पे neuro imaging becomes the investigation of the choice. Excellent. Fourth case, 10-month-old baby presented to you with a history of ability to stand but unable to sit. Okay. That means there is a developmental delay, motor delay, premature delivery, NICU stay for 10 days, birth weight of 1.2. Examination reveals scissoring of the lower limb on vertical suspension. MRI reveals periventricular leukomalacia. So what is the diagnosis? Excellent. So you are thinking of diplegic cerebral palsy. What drug can work in this child? Children with diplegic cerebral palsy, which drug will work very well in these children? वन इज बैक्लोफेन. बैक्लोफेन तब दिया करो जब डिस्टोनिया हर जगह हो, पर जहां डाइप्लीजिक हो तो वहां botulinum toxin. Very good, excellent, excellent. So you can see that botulinum toxin is a very good investigation. So the last case, 12-year-old male child presented to you with multiple episodes of seizure, poor cognition, hyperactivity, stubborn child, insignificant family history, birth history totally normal, faces is very long, large ears, large testes, IQ score is 37. What is the most probable diagnosis? So that means the child has epilepsy, intellectual disability, facial dysmorphism. Very good. So this is a genetic syndrome, and excellent. Somebody has very nicely told that this is a very classical Fragile X syndrome. So investigation in this child will be to screen for Fragile X investigation. So with this, I think I will end my presentation. Please mark your attendance. बस अटेंडेंस मार्क कर रहे हैं.
आगे से को दे दिया.
हाँ हाँ, ये ज़्यादा इजी है. ये तो 10 मिनट है ना. ये कहाँ से मिलेगा मुझे बता देना, पिछले क्लास का भी बता दिया.